I want to welcome everybody to the Let's Talk About It discussion, um, where each week we pick a different topic to talk about how it affects the Black community economically. A few weeks ago, I talked about 7 investment strategies to create Black empowerment. The first one was digital assets. And then last week, I honed in on that with a discussion about Bitcoin treasury companies and how we as the Black community can benefit from private Bitcoin treasury companies. And so today we're going to be focused on the second investment strategy, which is real estate. And so we're going to be talking about real estate reimagined, and we're going to have a discussion about community land trusts. So before I do that, let's go ahead and do our standard disclaimer. So the information that's provided today is strictly for educational purposes, and you're strongly encouraged to consult with licensed financial advisors, attorneys, and tax professionals before making any significant financial decisions. And though I do have decades of investment and real estate experience, I am not licensed or registered with any regulatory authority. And I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to start with a quick video that will actually explain the concept of using a community land trust, and then we'll get into the discussion portion. But in the meantime, I am going to put into the chat the link to the presentation, the PDF that I will be going over after the video. So to give you a chance to download the presentation so that you can follow along with me. It is a little involved, and so that's why I thought using a video to explain an overview before jumping into the presentation would be better. So at this time, let's start the video.
All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're digging into a really fascinating idea.
A strategy that's all about flipping the script on real estate and community ownership. We're talking about building permanence, production, and power right from the ground up. So let's jump in.
So before we get into the nuts and bolts of the solution, you kind of have to grasp the problem it's trying to solve. And it's a big one. We're talking about this long historical cycle where wealth gets pulled out of certain communities and people get pushed out. And this quote on the screen, well, it just nails it. This cycle erodes generational progress and diminishes community power. That's the core issue we're tackling here. Okay, so how do you even begin to fight something like that? Well, the response laid out here is basically a total 180. It's a direct counterattack. So instead of seeing land and cultural heritage just disappear, the idea is to put that land and those resources directly under community control. Instead of that constant drain of money out of the neighborhood, you build a sustainable local economy that keeps value inside. And instead of economic disenfranchisement, you work towards creating genuinely empowered, self-sufficient communities. It's a big shift in thinking.
All right, so let's get into the model itself. To make all this happen, the strategy lays out a whole new model for ownership. And it's not just one single thing. It's more like a framework, a system, built on 3 key pillars that are all designed to lock in together. You can think of it like building a 3-story house. Each level has to support the one above it. So at the very bottom, the foundation, you've got step 1, the Community Land Trust, or CLT. This is the bedrock that holds the land forever. Then on the second floor, you have step 2, the Operating LLCs. These are the actual businesses, think housing, food, energy, that are built on that community-owned land. And finally, on the top floor, you have step 3, a value sharing system.
This is the part that makes sure all the economic upside, all the benefits, get shared with the residents and investors. It's a complete system. Okay, so let's dig into that foundation, that first layer, the community-controlled foundation. The whole thing rests on this idea of a community land trust. Now, this isn't some fuzzy concept. It's a really specific, powerful legal tool that's designed to do one thing: protect the community's interests for good.
So what exactly is a community land trust? Here's the absolute key takeaway. The trust owns the land itself, permanently, in perpetuity. Individuals or families can own the buildings on top of that land, their homes, but the ground underneath is taken completely off the speculative market. That separation is the secret sauce. It's what keeps things affordable for the long term and stops people from getting priced out. The community holds the key, and the land can't be sold off to the highest bidder.
So a natural question is, okay, who's in charge, right? Who has the power? Well, the governance is set up to be incredibly democratic. The board is intentionally split 3 ways. You've got a third of the seats for the actual residents living on the land, another third goes to representatives from the broader community, and the final third is for technical experts and maybe some mission-aligned investors. This structure is brilliant, really, because it means no single group can just run away with the whole thing. It forces collaboration and makes sure the community's voice is front and center.
Now, where this all gets its real bite, its real power, is in the legal paperwork, specifically something called the ground lease. You can think of this as the constitution for the land. It's packed with these ironclad protections. For example, it puts caps on resale prices, which is huge for keeping homes affordable for the next family. It has clauses built right in to fight displacement. And it gives the community the right of first refusal, meaning if someone wants to sell, the community gets the first shot at buying it back. These aren't just suggestions, they're legally binding rules.
Okay, so you have the legal foundation, but an ambitious plan like this needs fuel, right? It needs money. So, let's talk about powering the system. Let's look at the financial engine that's designed to make all of this actually work. So, the funding model uses something called a capital stack. And honestly, the best way to picture it is like a layered cake. At the very bottom, you have what's called first loss capital. This might be from community bonds or philanthropic investors. They're the ones willing to take the biggest risk. Because they've laid that strong, risk-absorbing foundation, it makes the whole project way safer and more attractive for the next layers of money to come in, like private notes, equity, and even public incentives. It's a really smart way to de-risk the whole enterprise and bring different kinds of investors to the table.
And here's where things get really innovative. The model uses a modern tool called tokenization. Now, hold on. Before your mind jumps to crypto and all that wild speculation, let's be super clear. This is not that. Here, tokenization is being used purely as infrastructure. Think of a token as a digital share certificate or a transparent receipt. It represents a tiny, fractional piece of the actual cash flow coming from the real businesses on the land. It's just a super efficient, transparent way to track who owns what and to distribute the profits. It's plumbing, not a lottery ticket.
And that right there is the night and day difference between this model and your typical speculative real estate deal. The goal isn't to buy low and flip high. The entire focus is on generating steady, stable cash flows from real, essential businesses. We're talking rents from affordable housing, revenue from food sales. It's a closed network, which means it's designed for mission-aligned, repeatable returns, not for wild market swings. All right, so we've gone deep on the legal and the financial structures. That's the how. But now for the really exciting part, the what. What does this model actually build? How does all this theory turn into real-world stuff that people can touch and use? Let's get into it from the ground up.
One of the absolute pillars of this whole strategy is food. Food is power. I mean, think about it.
Hold on for one moment, because for some reason, the music cut back on. So let me cut that off. I apologize for that. And let me go back to sharing the presentation.
If a community can control its own food supply, that's a massive step towards real independence and resilience.
Want to get a little bit.
Get into it from the ground up.
One of the absolute pillars of this whole strategy is food. The philosophy behind it is incredibly simple, but also really profound. Food is power.
I mean, think about it. If a community can control its own food supply, that's a massive step towards real independence and resilience. And this isn't just about a few community gardens either. We're talking a whole portfolio of agricultural initiatives. You've got things like high-tech urban hydroponic farms for growing fresh produce all year round. You've got larger plots of land, maybe just outside the city, for growing staple crops. And crucially, it's about building direct supply chains, getting that food straight to residents, schools, and hospitals, cutting out the middleman. The whole thing is designed to be a system that also creates good jobs and real career paths in agriculture.
Okay, so you've secured the food supply. What's next? The model then moves on to building what the creators called defensive moats. I love that term. It's about taking control of other essential utilities, like energy and water. This is about building a fortress of self-sufficiency, making the community less vulnerable to outside shocks. So
I apologize again. For some reason, the music keeps playing. We only have a couple more minutes of this
What do
video.
these moats look like in practice? Well, you're looking at things like putting rooftop solar on every possible home and building. But it goes bigger than that. We're talking about community-managed solar microgrids that can actually disconnect from the main grid and run on their own during an outage. You add in smart systems for rainwater harvesting, you build shared resilience hubs with backup power and supplies for emergencies, and suddenly, you've created a community that's way less dependent on a fragile, aging external grid.
So we've seen the vision, the structure, and the real-world applications. It's a pretty amazing picture. But let's be real. A project this ambitious is gonna face challenges, right? So how does the model plan for the inevitable risks and bumps in the road?
Well, what's impressive here is that the strategy doesn't shy away from the risks, it tackles them head on. For the risk of just not being able to pull it off, execution risk, the plan is to start with smaller, phased pilots and create standardized playbooks that can be copied. To deal with the crazy world of interest rates and financial risk, it uses smart strategies like staggered maturities and hedging. For the curveballs that politics or policy can throw, it prepares by having a multi-jurisdiction posture and legal reserves. And for the day-to-day operational risks, it brings in professional third-party managers with super clear goals. And of course, insurance. It's a visionary goal, but with a very down-to-earth pragmatic roadmap.
And all of this, every single piece we've talked about, it all comes back to this one huge question. You see it on the screen right here. Can new models of ownership actually break those old destructive cycles of extraction? The framework we've just walked through, well, it's a powerful and detailed attempt to answer that question with a firm yes. It's a blueprint for a different kind of future, one where communities don't just survive, but thrive by controlling their own land, their own resources, and ultimately, their own destiny.
All right. Looks like I'm gonna have a problem with this music. So that was an overview of real estate reimagined, specifically using community land trusts. And I put in the link to the presentation. I'm gonna briefly go through the presentation. Anybody have any questions at any time, just unmute yourself and ask any questions that you have. So I think it's pretty evident of why we need something like this, right? So our reality is that Black communities have faced displacement, redlining, extraction of wealth, because we don't own the land where we reside. And more important than owning the land is controlling the land. And so this is where the community land trust becomes extremely an important tool in the tool belt for us keeping control of our communities so they don't get gentrified. I'm from the Los Angeles area. I was in college in the 90s when the LA riots happened, and I saw the gentrification of Black neighborhoods happen in Los Angeles because we did not control the land. And so this is a tool that I recommend that the Black community use as a means of creating economic power. And I propose it being used in the city of Detroit. So it's like building a three-story house. So the Community Land Trust is a nonprofit organization. It owns the raw land, and then it enters into 99-year renewable ground leases with developers that develop the land, whether it's housing, whether it's retail, commercial, but the most important thing is keeping it affordable and keeping it under the control of the community. And so it's the operating LLCs that are the developers. Again, housing, food, energy, water services, commercial services, retail, providing those essential resources to the community. And then there's value sharing. And this is where the tokenization comes into play. So it's the tokenization of these operating LLCs that allows members of the community to take a stake in these operating LLCs, as well as other people throughout the Black community that aren't necessarily in Detroit, but that want to assist the Black community in rebuilding itself. And so this is where residents and mission-aligned investors participate in the project's upside. So a little bit more about the Community Land Trust. It went over the board structure, right? A third are residents that live in the community. A third are community representatives that represent local community organizations, churches, nonprofits, business organizations, unions. And then a third are experts and investors. And so by having it be 33% to each group, it doesn't give any one group power, and it forces the coming together for the management of land. And then there's the protective ground lease. And so the ground leases, again, 99-year renewable leases, but they will specify that there's a certain amount of equity that needs to be kept in the property whenever the property is sold. And so one example is if the original investment in a property is $100,000, and we say that 30,000 of that is subsidized, to where that 30,000 needs to always stay with the property. And so now the property can be sold for $70,000. And I have no idea of how to stop this music. Excuse me again. This is crazy. Sorry about that, y'all. Having some technical difficulties with the music. But $100,000 investment, $30,000 is a subsidy. And so $70,000 is what the property could be sold for. But let's say that it appreciates over a 5-year period to $120,000. Well, so that's $20,000 in actual appreciation. And so the developer would share in the appreciation, but 30,000 of that would be kept as a subsidy with the property. So instead of selling the property for 120,000, they would sell it for 90,000, and then they would share in the appreciation of roughly 25 to 30%. So it makes sure that the property is always affordable, that it's not just getting flipped for a quick profit. And so these are the protections that the ground lease puts in play. It also puts in play that the community and the residents have the right of first refusal. So if a owner is going to sell a property, they must offer it first to residents and people within the community before offering it to an outsider. The capital stack. And so this is where creative financing really comes into play. One of the recommendations is to do a pilot program that includes building 25 properties that are scattered single-family homes around Detroit, and to do it as a portfolio and to get a portfolio loan. And because that would be a low $1 to $2 million investment, there are different hold on, I think I know how to stop this music function for all. There are different funding sources that are available for those type of loans. The city of Detroit actually promotes the establishment of community land trust, and they have a funding mechanism as well as some other public funding sources. There's also private foundation funding sources, and then the closed private investment network would be able to create a special purpose vehicle that would gather money from investors and either take an equity position or do its own type of lending as part of its capital stack. And so we could really get creative in the way that we fund this, starting off with, again, a pilot program, $1 to $2 million for 25 single-family homes scattered throughout the city in specific designated sites that the city of Detroit has highlighted where they encourage community land trust. So let's talk about the tokenization. This is specifically for the funds that are raised through the closed private investment network. We're all about fractional ownership, and that fractional ownership would be represented by tokens. And so the tokens, though, are not like crypto. They are strictly a digital receipt, electronic verification of ownership. It get recorded on the blockchain, but one of the main things is it would also allow for the easy trading, buying, and selling of your tokenized ownership in these projects, that you'd be able to trade and sell and buy ownership among the different CPIN members. Um, and so that's another benefit of doing this through the closed private investment. So I've talked about housing, but there are other developments that can be put on this raw land. And just to give you an idea about Detroit, Detroit has around 60,000 vacant lots or boarded up homes. In fact, if you own a property and it's located next to a vacant lot that's owned by the Detroit Land Bank Authority, you can buy that lot for $100. If there are vacant lots within 250 feet of your property, you can buy those lots for $500. And so there are entire neighborhoods where you'll have a block that has 40 lots, 20 lots on each side of the street, and there may only be 6 or 7 houses standing up on that block, and the rest are vacant lots that have been bulldozed on purpose for when Detroit was going through its hard times in the early 2000s, and it had a very, very high foreclosure rate. And rather than having all these houses boarded up, they decided that it was more cost effective to tear down the structures and to return the land to vacant land. And so the infrastructure, the water and the gas lines are still in the ground. The roads and sidewalks are still there. They're just vacant lots waiting to be developed. So not only can we develop them into housing, but we can develop them into agricultural investments. And we've heard about community gardens. That's one aspect. I propose using technology in order to develop urban hydroponics. This is where you are growing food within a closed environment. It uses no soil. It uses 95% less water. And in the size of a 53-foot trailer, you can produce the same amount of food that's produced by an acre of land. And it's can be located directly in the urban neighborhood. And so there has been great advancements on urban hydroponics. And so we could build warehouses that produce acres and acres of fresh vegetables. We could help cure the food deserts that occur in the hood. And we could also, again, use technology, create some additional jobs. And so that would create a direct to community supply as well as some pathways to employing people. Energy and water. So for each property that's developed, we would put solar on. And the goal is to develop entire blocks where we're the majority owner, so that we've got our houses that have solar on them, and then to connect all of those houses together to form solo microgrids, where we are creating our own power for our neighborhood. So that's one plan of how to create these defensive moats. Rainwater harvesting, believe it or not, that is illegal in some areas. I haven't researched the city of Detroit, um, but there are technologies now where we're able to extract water directly out of the atmosphere. And so, again, it's the use of technology. And then there's these resilience hubs. So the resilience hubs um, are hubs that have battery backups. And so in case of severe storms and blackouts, there is a hub in the neighborhood where there's power. And so, especially in Detroit, when we have those severe storms in the wintertime, a resilience hub where there's power, there's heat, all powered by backup generators and battery powered, can provide resilience to a neighborhood. Now, returns, risk, and controls. So the returns, the community land trust charges a ground rent, something around $50 to $75 per month per lot. And then the operating LLCs, they're generating their net operating income from housing, food, and energy ventures. Plus, there would be strategic tax credits because we're looking at doing this as a portfolio over multiple properties. Now, there are risks. There's execution risk, the risk of actually doing this correctly. And so this is where we recommend phase pilots, which allows us to create standardized playbooks for replication. This is my skill. I've got 30 years of building complex operational and financial systems. And so creating repeatable systems, documenting how those systems work, and then teaching people how to use those systems so that we can get something that's scalable and that works across different communities. Interest rate risks. And so there are strategies that we can use when it comes to the issuance and the borrowing of debt. And there's policy risk. And so this is where it becomes extremely important to work with the community. And so there are several community-based organizations in Detroit that are all about rebuilding the Black neighborhood. There are churches, there are nonprofits, there are politicians. And so it's about building a coalition and helping to guide the development through this, both the formal political and the non-formal political aspects of this. And then, of course, there's operational risk. And this is where my company, the BNIC Network, gets involved, because when it comes, like specifically with housing, we manage the entire operations from finding the property to purchasing the property, rehabbing the property, placing the tenant, and then property management. So here's what we have planned for the next 60 days. If there is enough interest, we will stand up, create a nonprofit community land trust, as well as an operating LLC. And we will identify local community organizations in Detroit that want to be involved in the community land trust. Then we'll also create a term sheet for investing in the operating company. And then we'll establish some working groups. These are specialized groups, working with people in Detroit, working with the Detroit Land Bank Authority, working with the churches, working with the other nonprofits in Detroit, as well as with members that want to be involved in these working groups. Then we would create a data room where we would provide access to our detailed pro formas, the covenants, the operating agreements, the risk memos, all of the paperwork that's involved in putting forth this type of endeavor. And then we would start the capital raise. This is where we would reach out to government agencies, we'd reach out to private foundations, we reach out to members for funding, and then we would start community onboarding once the capital is raised, and we start the execution of identifying lots to acquire or to be donated by churches, the hiring protocols for local contractors, and start getting the community involved in actually implementing this program. And so that is the presentation on real estate reimagined. And no one asked any questions while I was going through the presentation. So I am eager to hear your comments. Lorraine, let's start with you.
I'm curious, is this going to be the $500 investments that you're starting off with? And then is it starting off Black owned and then expanding to include other races? Or is it going to primarily just stay within the Black community?
Yeah, so we have not developed an investment opportunity for this yet. So we haven't set what the minimum investments will be, but it's typically going to be between $100 to $500 to invest in the special purpose vehicle. There may be multiple special purpose vehicles. There may be one that does a debt offering where it issues debt to the operating companies. Another may take an equity position. And so they'll have different returns, different risk profiles. And for this pilot and for the initial city is on Detroit. And we could spend years in Detroit because they've got so many vacant lots, so many neighborhoods. And we're looking at, again, doing a pilot of about 25 homes. And that pilot from beginning to end will probably take about 6 to 12 months. And, you know, even though we are Black focused, we welcome investments and people to join of any race that support rebuilding and supporting the Black community. So I hope that answered your question.
Yes. And why not a nonprofit? Or is this going to be like, how is it going to be incorporated? Or why not a nonprofit?
Yeah, so the Community Land Trust is a nonprofit, and it's the entity that owns and controls the land forever. And then it puts covenant restrictions through its ground leases on the um, on the developers of the land that create the buildings, whether it's housing, whether it's agriculture, retail, commercial, in order to keep the land affordable. So what that does is it stops people from just coming in, thinking they're going to develop a property in order to flip and make a whole lot of money, and to price out the community members. Um, so it's a combination of nonprofit and for-profit, and for the CPIN's for-profit companies, they are they are all public benefit companies, and by being public benefit companies, their priority is not profit, but it's providing a public benefit to the community, and so it has a balance between providing that public benefit and providing a reasonable return. As I tell people, especially investing in real estate in Detroit, there's enough meat on the bone for everybody to eat and to still keep it affordable. Any other questions, Lorraine? All right, let's go to Mark.
Hey Mark, hey Mike, great presentation as always. In your research, did you come across any, let's call them case studies or examples of these tools being used by other communities, et cetera, that can kind of help people visualize what this actually.
So there are case studies. I didn't specifically research them, but I mean I've known about community land trusts for a while, and I've read about other communities using them. But I don't have a specific use case that I can bring up at this time. Any other questions, comments? What do you guys feel about this as a strategy? Leroy, go ahead.
This is very exciting. I don't know how many years I have left. I would love to have another 50 or 60 years to add on to my 73 already to take advantage of this. This is really reimagining. And I really appreciate it. Just curious, with the 60-day plan, as far as Detroit is concerned, starting, how much discussion have gone on with Detroit entity? Has the 60-day time period already started? Are we talking about in the future 60 days timeline?
Yeah, no, so we're talking about in the future, 60 days. So starting next month, I have a handful of connections in Detroit that are planning similar types of projects. Um, I've been involved with real estate in Detroit since about 2021. Um, and it was a challenge to find the right people to deal with in Detroit. But I have a very good rapport with people associated with the Detroit Land Bank Authority, people associated with some churches and some other nonprofits. And so it would just be a matter of me reaching out if there's interest among the members. And so that's what this presentation really was for, was to teach about what a community land trust is, how it applies to the city of Detroit, and then to see if there's any interest in putting forth the effort of creating one. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, so this is just more of a comment and an exhortation to those of us on the call. Is I know in conversations I have with Mike, he talks about this 100,000 piece puzzle, and I think for those of us that are seeking the strategies and a way to participate in community uplift and empowerment, it's I would encourage you to start getting educated on all of these things individually, to the point where like your subconscious and your imagination start connecting dots, right? So imagine the investment approach where you own houses in the same neighborhood. You maybe own a couple of shopping centers, maybe a business that serves in that neighborhood. Then you also have an investment in a community garden, et cetera, or a land trust that is undergird this entire neighborhood, et cetera. Because that's what I'm starting to see and understand, is the potential of when you're able to use all of these different strategies together and concentrate it in an area, you really can economically take over and control that area from economic standpoint, um, um, to avoid the issues that Mike had pointed out we experience with real estate today. So that's it. I'm not sure if it resonated with anybody, but I just need to get that kind of processed and off my mind.
Thank you, Mark, because when I came up with the 7 different strategies for Black empowerment and creating economic power, a lot of it is focused around Detroit. And people may ask, why Detroit? Well, one, it's the Blackest city in the United States. It's one of the ones that was beaten down the most economically, had the largest bankruptcy at the time in 2013, but it has come back and it's coming back like gangbusters. And so we have a unique opportunity in history to keep control of the Black neighborhoods before they get gentrified. And we can look through the major cities throughout the United States, and we can see how they have come in and gentrified, and they redeveloped, and they reaped the benefits of the redevelopment of our neighborhoods. And we eventually got pushed out because we couldn't afford to stay in our neighborhoods. So Detroit is very unique because there is such blight, because you have a Detroit Land Bank Authority that wants to help, and can become the blueprint for other cities, specifically in the Midwest, so yeah, this is, again, the second of 7 strategies. The first one was digital assets, dealing with Bitcoin, and we talked about our Bitcoin treasury. This one is about real estate reimagined in the use of community land trusts. And so I hope that you're gaining valuable information from these discussions of these strategies. And if you're a member, that you're taking advantage of logging in and seeing the different investment opportunities that we have created around these strategies. Um, any other questions?
Well, I don't have a question, but I just wanted to add my the 2 cents for what it's worth. I just see this as a great opportunity, actually, to look in this type of investing to actually, be that solution in this day and time that we're in. Because from just looking at what's going on in this country with this administration and how they're just trying to, beat back Black peoples, into a form of slavery, and we have an opportunity right now to where we have to come together and work together all across the board. Um, as you were talking about, getting with some of those, church organizations, um, and also for those that are in those sororities or whatever to, try to give back to the community because, as far as governmental, I guess, uh, monies that's out there, it probably ain't going to be a whole lot because for right now until we can get these crazies out of office, we're going to be challenged with coming up with ideas and strategies how to help each other. And I think that this is a great start to doing that. And just getting out there and just letting people know how we can be like a coalition and work together to help each other through these times until we get control of what's going on. That's my take.
Thank you, Sally. And as our motto says, no one is coming to save us. We
That's
must
right.
save ourselves.
Mhm.
And so with that, I encourage everyone to invite one or two people to come to our Sunday Let's Talk About It discussion, and which we will be talking about our third investment strategy, which I don't remember off the top of the head. But for the next few weeks, we'll be covering one investment strategy every Sunday. Any final questions or comments?
Just want to continue to encourage you, Mike. I know what it is to have big visions, start off with a seed and grind it out until you get the momentum. Love it. I see what you're doing. And I just encourage all of us to, if you're on the call and you're a CPIN member, I encourage you to work yourself through all of the classes, right? That's the least we can do. If we're going to show up here, if this is a community, this is community, I believe it's meant for individuals that are self-starters, leaders, to work with like-minded people, and collectively we find those projects that collectively we take to our friends and family, we pull them in, and we empower them. That's what cooperative economics is about. If we're on the phone in your own right, you're a leader. Um, let's get comfortable and confident in the platform, what's being presented and offered, so that we're comfortable and easily sharing this opportunity with other people. So I'm locked arm in arm with Mike in this effort. And I just encourage everybody else to start digging in a bit more into the platform, what it has to offer, so that you're comfortable sharing what we're building with your friends and family.
Mhm.
Thanks, Mark. Go ahead, Leroy.
Yes, I want to follow up with what Mark just said. Um, the Bitcoin treasury last week was very, very interesting, and of course now um, the the real estate reimagined. So, what would you say? And perhaps Mark may have just clarified it. What would you say within the next between now and next week? We have these two entities plans on the table. what would you say for those that are on the call tonight in terms of what we should be doing between now and next week before the third plan is presented to make sure that we are up to date? Now, one of the parts I'm sure is membership, to make sure that we are members and clarifying what that membership is and the entities, the components that are involved with that. But what would you say to individuals on this call? Should we be doing between now and next week, taking advantage of the two things that have already been presented?
Sure. So I believe everyone here is a member, but if you're not a member, I'm going to put in the chat the link to become a member. So let's do that first. Give me a quick minute. So that's the first thing, is to go to the website, become a member, and then every member, if you're not an accredited investor, you should take the essential lessons for sophisticated investors. It's 3 short video lessons. The last one has a quiz at the end. You need to score 70%. But once you go through those lessons, then we can designate you as a sophisticated investor. So that should be the goal of every member, is to become a sophisticated investor. Once you're a sophisticated investor, then you should look seriously at the different investment opportunities that we currently have. And I think we've got 6 active investment opportunities that range from as little as $100 to $500, all fractional ownerships, as well as going through the library of courses in the Knowledge Center, just to make yourself better educated from a financial perspective, so that hopefully you can make better informed financial decisions, so that you can increase your risk tolerance and understand how to manage risk. And then the very last thing is invite 1 or 2 people to next Sunday's discussion. So with that, any other questions or comments? If not, I want to thank you guys for taking time out of your busy Sunday to attend the Let's Talk About It discussion. We're here every Sunday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And I shall see you guys next Sunday. Stay blessed and stay safe.
Thank you, Mike. Have a great evening, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.